encourages death. Like, you're talking about that mom, she couldn't stand watching her child be in pain. She'd have to be dead? What? Like, I can't even wrap my head around that. Like, I would do anything to save my baby, like anything.
Of course, that's your first instinct as a mother. But I think it depends on every single case. Like, if you knew that your child wasn't going to be saved, and your child was in immense pain,
are you
Did you watch it? Are you for heart transplants then?
How could you know that your child won't be saved? How could you know that for a fact? And then you can I understand it's difficult to watch your child be in pain, but there's painkillers and there's things like you fight for your child's life.
Yeah, you can't just have a loser attitude.
I mean, it's different with children. I mean, I think it really just depends on the disease and depends on what you're looking at. But if we're bringing God into it, are you for heart transplants?
Hold on. Let me say something before I ask some questions. If America shifts towards just ending lives and saying, oh, well, this person's going to be born with this illness or whatever, let's just unalive him. Let's not let this person be born. America will take that shift, and that's not a good shift because the stance to be, let's try to save. So we'll take a shift from instead of saving lives, which will encourage medicines, techniques that the doctors use, into instead of that, now we're going to shift over into the doctors. Okay, let's figure out easier ways to end their lives. So that's not a good curve. Look at America now, for example. We went from encouraging everybody to work. Now all of a sudden, everybody's encouraged just to get a government handout and sit home. You see the effect of that. So we shouldn't be encouraging easy ways to end lives. We should encourage ways, hey, let's figure out a way to fucking save them. That's just my opinion.
Euthanasia and assisted suicide are two processes designed to end the suffering of those chronic pain by ending their life or helping them to do so. In this video, I will provide you with a definition of both euthanasia and assisted suicide, showing you how they are similar and how they are different. The biggest difference between euthanasia and assisted suicide concerns who takes the life of the person. With euthanasia, the person's death is caused by somebody else. Whereas with assisted suicide, they are given all the necessary help to kill themselves, but the final act is taken by them alone. However, these definitions can be misleading, as they imply a world of difference between euthanasia and assisted suicide. By better understanding euthanasia, we can see that they are actually very similar. Euthanasia is a process that has two distinct forms, the active and the passive form. Active euthanasia is when death is caused by an act, for example giving somebody an overdose of painkillers. Passive euthanasia, on the other hand, refers to the omission of something, for example turning off somebody's life support or denying somebody an operation that would extend their life. This form of euthanasia is legal in many more countries than active euthanasia because it is often seen as letting somebody die naturally, as opposed to actively bringing about their death. So what do these two forms of euthanasia tell us about assisted suicide? I would argue that they show us that assisted suicide is more a form of euthanasia than a different process entirely. Why? Because for the person to be assisted in taking their own life, they have to be helped towards this goal. An example of this is Dignitas, a Swiss organisation that provides assisted suicide through a drink that contains an overdose of anaesthetic. The provision of this drink by somebody else cannot register as passive euthanasia, because by giving it to somebody, you are not letting them die naturally. You are actively helping them to kill themselves. However, it is neither active euthanasia, because under that scenario, the person would be administered the drink. With assisted suicide, they drink it themselves. Thus, I would argue that assisted suicide is a different form of euthanasia, which contradicts the idea that euthanasia can be purely condensed into the active and passive forms. The fact that in many countries where assisted suicide is legal, such as Belgium and Switzerland, it is referred to as voluntary euthanasia, only helps to prove my point. The fact that assisted suicide and euthanasia are thus closely related underlines the importance of knowing their separate definitions. The death of Noah Pothoven is a good example of where definitions are really important. She was a 17-year-old Dutch girl who took her own life by refusing to eat or drink. Yet Pothoven's suicide was falsely referred to as euthanasia in many news outlets. Thus, we can see why these definitions are important, because if we get them wrong, we can end up conferring guilt onto people that are not actually responsible for the acts we suppose they are.
So why are these questions about children coming up now, Nicole?
So why we're having this discussion now is because back when medical assistance in dying, that legislation was passed in June of 2016. So there were certain vulnerable groups that were excluded from that. It's a controversial issue at best. The thinking at that time was, let's look at adults over 18 who are suffering, who have a reasonably foreseeable death, and we'll deal with that group right now. But at that time, the legislation also promised to look at the issue of what they call mature minors. So these would be youth who are suffering similarly, who also may have terminal conditions. They may be, say, under 18, but say 15, 16, 17, but would be maybe judged not so much on their chronicle age, but be judged based on their capacity to give consent. So there was a promise and a commitment to look at that group and to see how to proceed with that group. So now we have a deadline coming up of December 2018 when a report is expected to be tabled about that particular group. So what's happening now is the Canadian Pediatric Society has looked and thought, okay, we have this deadline coming up, but we don't actually have any data on how our own members, our pediatricians, the people who are caring for children and youth, actually A, feel about this issue, and B, what kinds of, are they getting requests about this? Are they even having this conversation at this point with youth? So what they did was they issued a survey, and those results are what we're talking about today. So let's look at some of the key results here. So first of all, top line, like much of the general public, pediatricians are very divided over medically assisted dying, and particularly when it comes to their patients. So what we found, almost half of the pediatricians who responded to the survey, they are supporting extending the option of a medically assisted death to mature minors if they're suffering what they call progressive or terminal illness or intractable pain. But that number goes down to about 1/3 who support it if we're talking about an intolerable disability. And we also have 1/3 of those pediatricians who responded saying they just don't support medically assisted death for people under 18 at all. So that covers the attitudes on the pediatrician side. Now we take a look at how often they're actually getting requests about medically assisted death. So we found that 17 young people in Canada have explicitly asked to have medically assisted death. So we're talking about teens here, although it doesn't come out specifically who those teens were for confidentiality reasons. We're talking likely about teens here who are in severe pain, could have a terminal illness like cancer or something along those lines.
And these are themselves. This is not through their parents.
Correct.
Themselves.
So these are youth. So these are probably, these may be, although the survey doesn't specify this, we're probably talking about teens who may fall into that mature minor category, so older youth. But interestingly enough too though, this opened up another area where they found that pediatricians are also being asked by parents of young children. So these are kids who are obviously not mature minors. These are kids who would never be able to ask for themselves or to even give consent themselves. And they reported that they had about 400 exploratory conversations with parents of kids and explicit asks about a medically assisted death for 91 children. Half of those 91 children were either newborns or infants. And that's a finding I think a lot of people are really finding shocking today. And so it's important to note, Dr. Dawn Davies is the author of this report. She's with the Canadian Pediatric Society. She herself is a pediatric palliative care specialist. There aren't that many of them actually across this country. So she's been through this herself, and she's been very careful to clarify for people that when parents are asking for this, and she's seen this herself, these are parents who are sort of agonizing over what's the best decision for their child. They see their child in pain, they see that their child is dying. So now that the medically assisted death is actually sort of in the public realm of discussion, they're kind of wondering, is this an option that might work for their kids?
So where does this issue go from here?
So out of this data come recommendations, and the bottom line is the Pediatric Society is saying we need to be really careful. We need to tread it very carefully as we move towards that December deadline where we're talking about possibly extending this to mature minors. One of the most important things they say is that this can't be a decision made by clinicians or by politicians. We need to talk to the people affected. We need to talk to these youth who are, for instance, who are coming forward and asking for this option. We need to talk to those parents of those children who are very sick and those parents who are asking for this option. And one really interesting group that they want to talk to is actually bereaved parents. So parents who have had children who have died as a result of a horrific illness or a disability, and get a sense from them as to, if the medically assisted death option were available, what difference would that have made to them and to their child, whether it be positive or negative, and to help that to inform the decisions going forward.
And one of the recommendations is for more and better palliative care. So tell us about that.
That's a huge one. So palliative care, better palliative care in Canada, all sides of this debate agree on that one thing, that in Canada, palliative care is lacking, access to good palliative care, and on this particular issue, access to sort of palliative care geared to children and youth is lacking, both in terms of palliative care specialists who deal with children and youth, and the availability of so a child can die at home or in a hospital setting, wherever they and their family are most comfortable. So that's something that everybody agrees on, even Physicians for Life, which is a group of physicians that are fundamentally opposed to medical assisted death to begin with. They say that palliative care, if there were proper palliative care, you can manage all physical pain, you wouldn't need that option. But here's where it gets tricky, and we've had this debate in the adult population as well, is that the Canadian Pediatric Society recognizes that, yes, you may be able to manage the physical pain by something like palliative sedation, so having someone be unconscious and not feeling pain. But when someone chooses a medically assisted death in the adult population, it's often not about that. It's often about control and not wanting to be sedated and having an option. So the question is going to be, is this something that we should be extending to youth as well? So a really painful and difficult discussion.
Is it ever? All right.
You don't want your kid ever being diagnosed with cancer, and that never happens to, happens to other families, not ours.
4 years ago,
In his last year of school, Liz and Brett Harberman's 17-year-old son, Reese, was diagnosed with advanced bone cancer.
Come on, show us what you can do.
all Reese wanted to do was continue and keep going with his year 12, and the doctor said, forget year 12, mate, you need to concentrate on just staying alive.
Watch this.
Terrible after taking him home from chemo and just listening to him in his room at the flat we were using, just continuously vomiting.
It was just a real decline from this happy kid, or young lad that just, it was just, the cancer was sad, but seeing him like that was really, really hard.
Given a terminal diagnosis, police had discussed his wish to end his life if his pain became unbearable.
Originally, that's what he wanted to do. He just wanted to be in a motel room somewhere in Adelaide and just do it.
Yeah.
And we said, there's no way in hell you're doing that. You'll be here with us.
And he said, but you could go to jail. And I was like, well, so be it. Whatever. And so, with that, he taught me unconditional love. So be there with him.
In January 2017, Reese Harberman died by suicide at home. His parents and younger brother Lewis were with him.
Even if we had been in danger ourselves, I still would have done it. I did not want him to die alone, which was the other option.
But the nightmare wasn't over. Just hours after his death, police arrived.
I didn't want to leave him. Lewis certainly did not want to leave Reese, and they said, look, sorry, but you're going to have to leave. It's a crime scene now. So they took his laptop, his phone, not realising we wouldn't get it back for 18 months.
But he interviewed you, and then he interviewed me.
Hey, how you going?
Yeah.
Nice drive?
Yeah.
The police investigation meant Reese's other siblings were unable to farewell their brother.
Get you home safely. Right. The kids never got that to say goodbye. Yeah.
And we didn't know how much it affected Georgia until 12 months, 2 years later, when she actually broke down with us and said, I needed to see him.
How's the uni going?
Not too bad. Getting through it, sort of.
After 18 months in limbo, police concluded their investigation and the family weren't charged. Since then, Liz Harberman has joined the campaign to introduce euthanasia laws in South Australia.
Really? Yeah.
I don't even know that I would be brave enough to use it, but knowing that it's there, that I've got a choice.
South Australia is the latest state to vote on a voluntary assisted dying bill. Laws legalising euthanasia have already passed in WA and Tasmania. In Victoria, terminally ill patients with 6 months to live or 12 months if they have a neurodegenerative disease have been able to apply to legally end their lives for nearly 2 years.
I have not seen one example so far of anyone who's been pushed, coerced or inveigled in any way into taking the assisted dying medication. In fact, it's been more the reverse of people trying to stop them.
Former Supreme Court Judge Betty King chairs the independent agency overseeing the law's implementation.
Even people who were opponents, such as perhaps the children of the applicant, they might start off as opponents, but often by the end of the process they are enormously grateful that this was available for their parents to have a dignified and peaceful exit from a pretty painful death.
So my partner Jade was diagnosed with cervical cancer in March 2017 and ended up dying in October 2018. So she lived for 18 months. She was stage 4 and we were told that she had 12 months to live from them. So it was like fairly downhill from there. She knew that this wasn't going to end very well. In her journey of having cancer, she met other people with her disease and with other types of cancers who had died horrible deaths, and she really did not want that to happen to her. In the last 6 months, her disease progressed so much, and the tumours in her body became so large that it impacted her on a daily basis. You know, she had up to like 5 kilos worth of fluid in her legs a day, which is immensely painful, and no pain relief can relieve that. Towards the end of her time, she wanted to die at home, and fortunately I was able to grant that wish for her and make that happen with the use of palliative care, which they were unbelievable, but again could not relieve all of Jade's suffering. Not only could her physical pain not be relieved, but her emotional and spiritual suffering could most definitely not be relieved at all. Jade's last week on this earth were nothing short of hell, not only for Jade but for her family and my family who were there to watch her leave. She was so dosed up on pain medication that she was hallucinating and thrashing around the bed, and she didn't know where she was or who we were or what was happening for her, which is immensely distressing, not only for her but for us. I'm going to give some gory details because, again, I think it's really important that you hear, because otherwise, it's like I said, you guys can have all the paper and all the facts, but until you hear the actual things, you don't really know. Her tumour in her abdomen was so large that it was, impacting her ability to use the toilet. So she had a catheter in permanently. Because of the pain medication she was on, and because of the tumours, it was impacting her bowels. She would end up vomiting her own faeces on the regular. The way that her tumour was positioned in her body, when I would have to change her, parts of her tumour would fall out from underneath. The tumour was so large in the back that it cracked her vertebrae. So, trying to roll her over, she would scream in absolute agony because of, cracked vertebrae. You could only imagine. Just having that comfort in the cupboard would have made the world of difference to Jade. Unfortunately for you guys, you didn't get to know Jade, but if you did know Jade, you would know that she was an incredible fighter, and she did not want to die. She wanted...
Take your time.
Yeah.
There's no pressure at all.
Yeah. Just want to get it out. She did not want to die, so she wanted to be here. So there's no way that she would have taken that medication to end her life had there been any other option. She only would have taken it to end her life at a point of no return, and she was at a point of no return. And the way that she was forced to leave this world is horrific. Like, it's just so unjust. And when you put the people that you love the most in these positions, and you watch the way that they are forced to leave this world, it traumatizes you. I was 28 when Jade died. I'm 31 now, and it's never going to leave me. It's never going to leave her family. It's never going to leave my family. It will forever be etched in my memory that these are the last memories I have of the person who I love the most in the world, and that's not a true representation of who she was. And as hard as this is for me and the others to be here today, it's incredibly important. And I would do it all again, and Jade would do it all again if it meant that it would change the lives of other people so they didn't have to go through it.
There was no medicine that could save Ella Louise from a rare genetic mutation called Krabbe disease, which destroyed her nervous system. Heavily sedated in these final days of her short 10-month life, no food or water to try and speed up the inevitable.
The stickers of morphine, they kept on our body. We didn't take them off anymore. So you always keep sticking more and more. And with all the other medication you need to give, then you start asking questions, and you say, what's the use of keeping this baby alive?
Sedation, withholding food and water, it's all perfectly legal. But Linda wishes she could have administered a fatal dose, which is not, and spared them both the pain of those long final days. Which is why she's campaigning for a change to Belgium's end-of-life and euthanasia laws.
We want, for those children, we wanted to be able to talk about euthanasia and to ask those questions, and if they really want to say, stop, this is it, I don't want it anymore, that they can have a choice.
Lawmakers in Belgium are now considering this very question. Should children have the right to ask for their own deaths? Pediatricians like Gelant van Balea say it'll simply legalize what happens anyway.
Doctors do terminate lives of children as well as of adults, and but today it's done in, let's say, in a grey zone or in the dark because it's illegal.
Critics question whether children can even reasonably decide whether to end their own lives, and whether their decisions won't simply reflect what they think their parents want. Isabella Sakovic has Huntington's disease, a degenerative neurological illness which drastically reduces life expectancy in children. She's just turned 18. In the last few years, she's lost the ability to walk, eat, or speak properly, but she can still think for herself.
Tu sais qu'est-ce que ça veut dire, euthanasie? Non. Euthanasie, ça veut dire, si jamais on n'est tellement pas bien, on est malheureux, que on veut pas rester ici. On veut partir chez c'est là-haut qui nous aide, chez Dieu. Mais si on part pour toujours. On ne revient plus. Qu'est-ce que tu penses de ça? C'est bien ou c'est pas bien? Ce n'est pas bien.
Her mother, Ivona, struggles to look after both of her children and keep working as a cleaner to keep the money coming in.
Si on fait tout pour notre enfant, si on sait qu'il est content, on voit un sourire et ça récompense tout, alors si on a des aides, on ne pense pas de mourir notre enfant.
She thinks the senators inside these walls should focus instead on better support for families like hers, especially as children like Isabella pass into adulthood when the care options shrink further.
One of the main arguments is that this is more a matter of principle than anything else, that only a very small number of children will ever in practice ask to end their lives through euthanasia. And if you look at the Netherlands, where since 2002 children with parental consent have been allowed to request euthanasia, since then only 5 children have ever done so. Diana Magnay, CNN, Brussels.
Though heaven's a place that you can't see from here, it says in the Bible that heaven is near. So Avery will still be close by. But here's something different, and this is no trick. In heaven, nobody will ever get sick. So Avery won't have a boo-boo anymore. And she won't be wobbly. And she'll be all healed and perfect. And that's happy, isn't it, Becca? I know, it's hard to talk about. See how calm she is? Yeah. Even if she goes to heaven, she's always going to be your sister. She's always in your heart. Okay? Even if you can't see her there, she's always inside your heart, okay? Do you remember in that book we talked about when you die, your heart stops? Before it stops, it doesn't work as well. So you turn really pale, you fall asleep. She's not feeling any pain right now because she's so asleep. She knows you're here because you're her sister and you're her best friend, but she's not feeling any pain. And everything we're doing for her right now is to keep her comfortable until it's time for her to go be with Jesus. Okay. And that could be today. It could be tomorrow. But probably soon. Okay? Do you have any questions? No. I'm scared. It's scary. Why is it scary? It's hard for all of us. That's why everybody's so sad.
I'm not gonna be quiet. No. I'm not gonna be quiet.
You want to know what I was doing?
What?
I was listening to see if Avery's heart was still beating.
Did it?
No, her heart has stopped. So she's not gonna wake up. She's gonna go to heaven. Even though this part of Avery is here, the part that makes Avery who she is in her heart and in her soul, that we can't see, has gone back.
You want to give her a hug too? Let's give her a hug.
For you. Why so many people here?
This one's the biggest one of these, of the orange.
You know they have ice cream at McDonald's.
I do? Yeah, do you want to stay?
I just want you guys to know that you've been the best, strongest parent I have ever known.
We need some cuddle.
Right over the water so it doesn't get all over the floor.
Squeeze all that water.
Really hard. If you need an extra set of hands so it doesn't drip.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to squeeze together.
So much easier to talk about than actually do it.
How do you want to wrap her?
I'm a lefty, so I just have to turn her. I want you to go to Andy, okay? I want you to turn around and go right to Andy's arms, okay? Okay? Go right to Andy. He's right behind you. Andy, quick kiss. Quick kiss. Okay. All right, you guys. Hold on to each other. I've got her. I've got her.